go. You guys know how we get this started. We want everybody to just come in and fill in the space. This is our first session. It's like our tester session, because you'll hear me say this over again. But this is our tester session. This is year number 4. This is our 6th year of being on the ground. So I'm going to start like I normally start, and I'm going to say on the count of 3. I want everyone under the sound of my voice to say yes. 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
That was soft. Okay, that was really soft. I think the people at the Palais need to hear you, because we are Inkwell Beach. We are the first and only diversity, equity, and inclusion beach in the history of Cannes Lions still today.
Woo.
So I need the people at the Palais to hear you. So everyone under the sound of my voice, I want you to say yes after 3. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Oh, I felt that. Well, welcome to our 6th annual Cannes Diversity Collective Inkwell Beach. Welcome. Give yourselves a round of applause for showing up. My name is Adrienne C. Smith. I am the founder of the Cannes Diversity Collective, and this is the Cannes Diversity Collective Inkwell's Beach. I say this is the Cannes Diversity Collective because we also go to Davos during the World Economic Forum, so we have the Davos Cannes Diversity Collective. And we have some of our Davos friends here. If you're in Davos, shout it out. Woohoo! So we're global. I'll normally say we're global bitches, but I don't think that's appropriate to say, right? Okay. So we are excited to have this first session. With me this morning, I have Frank Sterling, who is the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer of the Essential of Cannes Lions. So please give him a warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Adrian.
In the spirit of inclusion, I don't think if you guys noticed something new about our stage, but we have a signer here with us, Deborah McLeod. Give her a loud shout out. Yes, the hands. Cat nose. I love it. So we're going to sit down and we're going to have a great conversation about the journey of this festival. We're going to have a conversation about the journey of the Cannes Diversity Collective and our point and purpose of everything that we want to do. So Frank. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here, and this is one of my favorite parts to the festival, getting a chance to experience Inkwell Beach, knowing the legacy that you've built, Adrian, which is phenomenal. So really pleased to be here.
Yes, thank you, thank you. So Frank, this is year 2, and I love this story because I think it was like day 2 of your job, maybe.
Pretty much. Let's call it that.
And this was his first, like, a part of duty is to show up on the Inkwell Beach stage. So we're always very grateful for you showing up and celebrating with us.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the journey. And, you know, I always tell people the first time that I came to Cannes Lions was in 2017. And what you guys may see and experience now is very different from what I experienced in 2017, because the atmosphere is much more diverse. I think out of the 20,000 people that were in attendance in 2017, only 200 looked like me. But the point of conversation was about inclusion and how could we be more inclusive. And I said, is this a trick question? You know, we just have to create a more inviting environment for people to come. And so I brought young people, and 5 years ago it was 5 people, and they showed up and showed out. And now we are up to 27-ish young people that we have here. Shout out to the ambassadors. If you're an ambassador, yes?
Fantastic.
This is our 5th cohort
Amazing.
of ambassadors.
Amazing.
And they are from 6 different continents. Shout out for all the continents that are here. We are still struggling with Antarctica. If anyone knows anybody in Antarctica, please help us out.
And I think let's just touch on the legacy of that, Adrian, because very few individuals would take it upon themselves to put themselves out there to make that kind of decision. And that legacy is felt at the festival. The fact that you know, I've watched that video so many times now where you decided to get up, talk to Halle Berry and share your thoughts and perspectives on wanting to drive representation. It came from the most authentic place, and that authenticity has always been centered in your approach, and I think your legacy is certainly felt at the festival, and I'm really pleased to be able to be not just part of this journey, but support that journey, but also see the ripples of that representation continue during the festival, which I think is really exciting. So yeah, would love to hear more about that and
Yeah,
that journey for you.
I think the journey for me has been one of, if you guys know the movie The Color Purple and you saw Miss Sophia talk to Miss Seeley after Harpo beat her, she was like, all my life I had to fight, right? So it's like this journey of DE&I is a
Yep.
journey of fighting. And right now in the U.S., there's a struggle with DE&I.
Right.
And we just, for me as a practitioner, and I've been doing it since the late 1900s, if you believe that. But the late 1900s, and there's always this ebb and flow of this work. And I think what's important for people to know is that DEI will never die,
Yeah.
right? It will evolve,
Definitely
it will
evolve.
change, but it is something that will be continued. And you just have to, what I say, put 10 toes down and be willing to keep the work going. So
Yeah.
the journey for me is like par for the course. I always say it's part of my DNA.
Yeah.
So it's just what I have to do. I figured in life, probably later in life, that it was my mission and my calling. And when it comes to something like that, I think it makes it easier.
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, this is just another day. Let me just, throw some cold water on my face and keep the movement going. But to have partners like the Cannes Lions Festival and all the support that you guys provide us and provide our young people to give them that access, I think is just so critically important. So we're grateful to the partnership with you guys.
No, we are really excited about the opportunity to be able to partner with you. And I think you touch on a really important point, which is the deprioritization by some organizations of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'd like to say, start that reprioritization. If you've started to regress your commitments, you've got to take a deep dive into that. In order for us to be truly representative of the communities we serve, diversity, equity, and inclusion needs to be at the center of our approach, right? It's the integrity, it's the cultural nuance, but much for what you've been advocating for, how else would we level the playing field? Right, those systemic barriers will just kind of exist out there in the ether unless we have programs and take action to level the playing field. And that's really at the heart of obviously what CCDC is advocating for. So,
Absolutely. So tell us about the Lions Festival for the many of you who have not heard from a representative from the Lions Festival.
yeah.
And talk about your commitment, talk about the journey, and it has evolved since we've been in these Cannes streets. But your feeling about what it looks like for you and the Lions Festival's commitment to it.
Yeah, well, the Lions Festival at its core, it's a celebration of creativity. We are, I guess, can see ourselves as the convener of many different communities. And it's an exciting moment throughout the year for those working in creativity, in marketing, in branded communications, because it's an opportunity to celebrate the work first and foremost, groundbreaking work, which is pushing boundaries. But at the same time, I think it's a phenomenal opportunity to network, to meet new communities. And I think community has been probably the biggest part of what Inkwell Beach has provided and contributed to the Cannes Lions Festival. Being able to carve out that space to ensure people feel like there's a place for me here. And that continues. I started in my role 14 months ago now, so this is, as you mentioned, this is my second festival.
14 months ago, not even a full 2 years, so applause. He's been in it, right?
I still feel relatively new navigating these spaces. But I think I'm heartened by the fact that we are leaning into diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our strategy is called ERA, and that stands for Equity, Representation, and Accessibility. This year, we launched an initiative called the ERA Pass, where we backed nearly 1.5 million euros worth of complimentary passes to the festival. We had applications
Applause for that. That's great, yes.
Thank you. We had applications from 52 countries, and I'm really excited to meet those communities. Some very established, but actually 98% of those communities had never been to the festival before. So to your point of access, we just need this concerted and combined effort of how are we going to create access? Like, what is our commitment to that? What is the vehicle for access? And I believe that that's where we should kind of center our approach right now.
I think one important thing that you talked about or you said was access. And then the inspiration that comes after you get that access. Just from a personal journey of the first 5 years of ambassadors that we did bring, one of the key things, well, number one, when you bring a diverse group of people into a space and you're more inclusive, it changes sort of the mindset and inspiration for them, not only for the individuals, but for the people that they have access to. I know for one of the academies, we had two young girls, and I always love to tell the story. Alex and Jenna, they were a part of the Roger Hatchell Academy.
Nice.
And one day I was ear hustling on a conversation because, you know, when you're in these Cannes streets, you got to ear hustle to see what's going on.
That's
so
a great
network,
phrase,
right?
by the way.
Right,
Can we
you
all
gotta
hear hustle?
Hashtag ear hustle, right? That's your mission to, you know,
Ear hustle
listen
now.
in, right? So they were talking about these two young black girls from America who had changed the trajectory of the conversation and inspired and just kept the energy going. And I was like, excuse me, but who are you talking about? And they were like, Alex and Jenna. And it was so like mind-blowing for me because those were two of the young people that I brought to the festival. And they said, thank you so much for bringing them because they really elevated the conversation. They really sparked energy and kept it going. And I was like, damn it, that means I have to do this again because I needed more of us to be able to change this conversation and change the narrative and inspire people.
Yeah.
And then what really took me out, you know, was Jenna said to me, Adrienne, thank you so much for creating this program because now I know that I can compete on an international level and that I have the option to live somewhere else outside of the U.S. Like, wow, right? That's just kind of like it opened up her aperture of what all those possibilities are. So the inspiration that young people get when they come in contact with you and other people that are just roaming down the streets is just incredible.
Yeah, and when you don't see yourself represented, you have to be a trailblazer. You're forced into that environment. Not everyone wants to be a trailblazer. I know growing up, I was looking for those figures, but they fundamentally weren't there. And I think we have a tremendous opportunity now with the rise of things like Gen AI, with a real focus or pull back to community, to really look at what does representation look like at our most senior levels, and how do we commit to not just breaking that glass ceiling, but creating those pathways. Because I've got my son in the crowd, Vincent, my wife and son. There's Vincent.
Vincent was applauding earlier. Hey, Vincent. He's like, I see. He's like, hi.
He's 3 years old. And I think about those young people going through, they should feel like an equal in every single room they walk into. You know, we talk about imposter syndrome. That is a societal construct. You know, imposter syndrome shouldn't be a personal thing that anyone should endure. You shouldn't have to walk into a room and think, I don't deserve to be there. Of course you deserve to be there. So I think affirming that is really important. But then it's also looking at what actions are we taking? What is your strategy to increasing your representation, right?
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. And it doesn't matter what level, what organization, or what company you're with. To your point, just sort of do it. If you create your own path, if you don't see that representation there, just be inspired to do something different. And I think this space is, and I say this space, the quartet and everything and all the activations are so inspirational. You will do something that, you know, you never thought or believed could happen. Because I just wanted to bring young people, and now look what we have. We have the space for you to find community. And what was even more important, what I thought I was building for myself, if you think about taking a chance to do something, it turns out that it was more beneficial to the festival at large than just people who look like me.
Yeah.
I remember the first year we were having a big party and someone said, you know, look at this space, because, you know, everybody was dancing and we had a great DJ. And he said, and he didn't look like me. He had pink hair. I didn't really understand what he was saying, so he was from a different country. And he said, you know, this is the future of Cannes Lions, right?
Nice.
So what we're seeing right now is the future of Cannes Lions. And I was like, but I didn't create this for you. But he's like, but this is the first time that I felt like I belonged. Right, at Inkwell. It was his first time, and he had been coming to the festival for 8 years at that point. So I say all that to say, when you create something that benefits, and I'll say the least of these, or a marginalized community, you actually create opportunities for others to follow and other people to have access. And I love to break it down in the simple way of, everybody has seen the cut curved. You know, when you're walking down the sidewalk, there's a lower space on the curb, right? So that was not created for white cisgender men, you know, fully abled. It was created for people, and they had to pass a law for people in wheelchairs who were disabled. But guess who benefits from it? mothers pushing baby carriages, people pushing groceries, people riding bicycles. That one thing for one particular group ends up benefiting everybody. And I think what's happening with DE&I right now, especially in the States, they're saying raise the curb back up so no one has access.
Right.
And so I think we have to continue to be inspired, to keep pushing and keep seeing opportunities, keep putting people in place, keep putting people in places like you have so that they can see the growth trajectory and opportunities that we have. So.
Yeah, and I think pulling it back to, starting with the E, starting with the equity. It is the hardest thing to get right, let's face it. Often the equity conversation is avoided because it fundamentally admits that it isn't a level playing field. And in order to level the playing field, we actually need to have the uncomfortable conversation. We need to, as leaders, be able to detox our ego, right? We've got to create that safe space. I like that.
Detox your ego. Let's write that down. Hashtag detox ego.
Yeah, that expression's from Dr. Steven Sylvester. You can check out his book, Detox Your Ego. And I think as a leader, if you can detox your ego, you're creating that safe space where you are willing to be challenged and you're willing to accept that challenge. And I think that can be fundamentally the most difficult thing to look at, because too often we reinforce our own opinions within an echo chamber, and that's a really dangerous place to be, because that ultimately reinforces our biases. Right? We often don't necessarily know every single aspect of what our biases might be. So if you can pull back and say, look, through the lens of co-design, it kind of reminds me of that quote, nothing about us without us. So through the lens of co-design, I'm going to bring people in the room, and when I'm designing something, when I'm building something, I'm going to make sure representation is there. And I'm also going to accept that I may not have the right answer every single time. Right? So I think that creates that space for representation to be at the heart. But it's also equitable, because you're providing and creating, when I say providing, I think creating is a better word. You're creating those stretch opportunities that people should have the chance to access.
I like the emphasis on equity, because in this journey of DE&I, it means the D means something different, the E means something different, or the I, depending on where you are in the world. And some people lead with the D for diversity, some people lead with the E for equity, and then in some countries and places they lead with the I for inclusion. Yeah. But equity sometimes has to be like at the forefront. And I think, if I talk about the moment of equity here, we don't ask for badges, so I hope no one was like, you can't get in without a badge, because we wanted people to feel like they had access, no matter if you were a badge holder or not. Yeah. Speaking of equity, too, we celebrate our AYA Inclusion Award, so if anybody's coming tonight, please. And in a spirit of equity, we don't charge an entry fee or a submission fee for the creative work. So what that does is it levels the playing field for any agency size, any creative to submit inclusive work. So we celebrate the I in the inclusivity, and so that creative had to have a lens of inclusion. So the focus on E, I said all that to say, is been a critical part of what we're doing here too.
And I've got a question for you. I think, if you think about 5 years ahead from now and you kind of look back on the legacy that you've built, what would bring you joy? What would make you happy when you kind of have that retrospective?
Wow, that's a good question. I think looking out and seeing so many diverse faces right now is a part of that legacy, and what brings me joy. Knowing that even planning this session, I probably had little to do with it, but there are some people who are walking around who are volunteers. When I tell you everything that's happening here has happened with the volunteers, it's been incredible. So to know that this lives on without me, because the young people have taken over, like Francesca Weems is walking right there. She's an ambassador. There's so many other ambassadors who are out here that I probably can't see because my eyelashes are falling into my eyes, but that's another. But they have committed the time. And so the legacy for me is knowing that I could step away and the ambassadors will take this 100% over. Yeah. They know the spirit in which my voice is, in terms of the spirit of what this was created for. They got it, and they're ready to roll. And that's the great thing about that next generation. And the succession planning is what I believe in. I know I'm not going to be here forever, but what's key is that next generation. And if we can pour into the next generation to be able to equip them with the tools and access that they need so that when we're not here, Frank, it's like been there, done that. They got this, and they don't have to rebuild again. So if nothing else, hashtag succession plan, right? That we got so many hashtags that they are able to, you know, in 10 years, if this is still going and it's bigger and, you know, the Aya Awards is on the main stage. Did you see how I plugged that? What it looked like is, the Aya Awards are on the main stage and celebrated in such a big way. That will let me know that we've penetrated and made a difference. I think we have, because I hear out on those Cannes streets people talking about, you know, the spirit of Inkwell and what we do. But that's probably what it would be.
No, it's amazing. You have made a difference. Can we just round of applause for that, first and foremost?
Thank you.
Let's not underestimate that. And I was a little over a month in my job before I was at the festival for the first time. And I was really nervous about inclusion. You know, I've been in spaces where, you know, I'm not always accepted. I don't always feel included. I am the only person in the room. And it was really heartening turning up to Inkwell Beach for the first time, where inclusion was just in the design of this space, you know, where I was, you know, helped to open up the beach first time, thanks to your introduction, thanks to your invitation. And off the bat, it was amazing to look out the crowd and see such phenomenal representation. So that, to your point of tooling up the young people for the future, I think just seeing that, having access to the stakeholders that exist within the festival year on year, and then intentionally being able to create those moments of connectivity, I think really helps to drive that.
I love that. I think we only have 1 minute left before we start our next session, but I want to ask you then, like, what is your advice for the audience in terms of how do we keep that same energy up for diversity, equity, and inclusion, knowing we have lots of pushback? What's your advice for the Inkwell community, the Cannes Diversity Collective? What would you say?
I think the first thing I'd say is feel confident to challenge. You have a unique perspective that you want to share. And sometimes you've got to frame the conversation and say, look, can I kind of challenge your perspective? Is that okay? Because we don't know if someone's going to detox their ego. However, because of your uniqueness, it's really important to be able to share that perspective. So that's the first thing I'd say. The second thing I'd say is be shameless. Sometimes we hesitate to put the ask in. Just put the ask in, it's all good.
I love that, because I don't think the only thing I would say when he said, you know, ask for permission, how we got here is we didn't ask. We just showed up, so sorry.
Just show up, yeah.
We just showed up. We just started building, and they're like, who are they? But I think it's important to say there's an amount of respectful sort of conversation, knowing how to ebb and flow through that, I think is incredible. So any questions? I think we may have room for 1 or 2 questions before we go. Going once, going twice. Oh, yes, Aubrey, of course.
My name is Aubrey. I'm the Associate Director of Talent Engagement. Oh, okay, period. Let me get a mic. Okay. Hi, everybody. I am the Cannes Diversity Collective Ambassador this year. Very excited to be here. My name is Aubrey Hayes, and my question to you is, what is your vision for the future of Cannes Lions in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Amazing. Thank you so much, Aubrey, and great to meet you for the first time. So when we think about vision, it just echoes what Adrian said, like representation is at the heart of the festival. And that doesn't just to continue to grow at a nominal pace, it continues to grow at an exponential pace. I think when we look 5 years ahead from now, 10 years from now, it should be obvious that we are serving underrepresented and underserved communities. And I'd extend that to how do we then dive into the equity? What does that look like in terms of supplier diversity, working with organizations to deploy their commitments to supplier diversity, because I think that's really important. So getting into that conversation as an industry, moving the industry forward is definitely where my passion is at. And I just hope that we can continue those conversations so it actually happens, right?
I love that. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause to Frank Sterling. And a shout out to Deborah for doing the amazing signing for us. Yes, please. So thank you so much. Our next panel is about to start, and we are ready to go for this entire week. So again, welcome to the Cannes Lions CCDC Inkwell Beach 2024.